What's up, guys? That song is aptly titled
What up?
Crazy by Gnarls Barkley because it's been an interesting situation over the past 20 minutes with this AP stuff. We'll get to it in a second, but welcome to InsidersTV. The show's sponsored by FantasyElite, the app that you get the App Store and draft on. I'll be drafting against Napster Man, which is one of the well-known players, and then a guy that he's been crushing the elite drafts lately. Kevin, his name is Damp on DraftKings, but Magic Sports Guy on FantasyElite and some of the other daily fantasy sites. But we're going to be talking about daily fantasy today. We're going to talk about news and notes. And with me, I have Dan Gasper, a.k.a. Mr. Tuttle 05, one of the top daily fantasy players, and then a man that needs no introduction, Evan Silva from rotoworld.com. Guys, how goes it today?
Great.
So we'll talk about the AP story in a second. We were just talking. I have my first celebrity other than Davis Maddock that follows me. Tom E. Scott. Tom, if you're watching,
we gotta find the YouTube clip of that thing you do.
Yeah, you're the man. But no, he is the drummer. He was the drummer in That Thing You Do. Was also in Dead Man on Campus. And I remember we were talking about him earlier, but he was on Matthew Berry's podcast, and I was talking about fantasy football. But he has a sci-fi thing coming out. But he basically told me, JJ, and Davis that he loves our work and he reads us every day, and listens, which I don't know why, but other than Katy Perry, he is probably my biggest celebrity endorser. So, Evan, who's your biggest celebrity endorser? Is that Hush Hush?
Yeah, I don't know. I talk to Jim Cramer from Mad Money sometimes. He loves fantasy, man. It's pretty cool.
Oh, now he would be a good guest to get on the show. Buy, sell for daily fantasy. He would be.
Yeah, and he deals in the same sort of world. You know what I mean? So it's funny to see him sometimes too. He'll overreact about things, and I'll be like, "But you deal with you're dealing with similar strategies,
Yeah, for sure. He's very him and Davis on a show would be great together.
Oh God.
Right.
I don't know if I could handle that.
Not in the same room because they would probably hurt each other. But all right, let's get into news and notes for today. The biggest. I was going to start with the Oakland running back situation. I figured that was right up Evan's wheelhouse. But let's go ahead and start with the AP story. So it's come out that he is facing an indictment in Texas for child abuse charges. Is that am I right there, Evan?
Honestly, it came out literally 15 minutes before the show started.
Yeah.
And I just briefly scanned a story from My Fox Houston, and I don't even want to talk about the details of it because I don't really know the details of it. What I can tell you, though, is that based on preseason, Matt Asiata was the number 2 back in Minnesota. Jerick McKinnon is a guy that the Vikings drafted in the 3rd round. Davis loves him. He's a measurables freak. He's a spark freak, if you know about what that is. He would if you're trying to hit a home run, Jerick McKinnon is the guy to grab. And then Matt Asiata, if AP misses time, he would be the initial favorite for workload in Minnesota's backfield. But we have no idea about Adrian Peterson's status for week 2, and we don't know his status at all going forward.
Yeah, that's the thing is right now the details are just fuzzy, but definitely a weird, dark week for the NFL this week. You've got McKinnon, who raised some eyebrows earlier this year in the preseason because AP said that he was basically the biggest freak of nature. I'm sure I'm off as far as the quotes, but basically saying that he's a freak of nature and that he's never seen anyone like him. Dan, am I kind of on the right path with that?
Yeah, you are. As far as this show goes and what we're concerned with as far as daily fantasy, the implications are obviously, stay tuned to the news to see if AP is going to be out this week. You would assume he would. I feel like anything's going to be more of an overreaction at this point in time from the NFL because of kind of the debacle they had with Ray Rice. So I think the side of caution is going to be to kind of overreact with the whole AP thing, but definitely keep your eye on the news to kind of see how it turns out. But I agree with Evan as far as I know we have some season-long guys in here that Evan dragged in, and Jerick McKinnon's probably the guy that you would want to, because neither guy, Asiata's not going to get you. He's not going to be a weekly start. Whereas McKinnon, he's going to be kind of the home run guy for you if he does hit. So he would be the guy that I would target as far as like season-long stuff goes. But for daily, keep an eye out. But you're not going to be able to start, I don't think, either of these guys this week.
Yeah, I think if anything, maybe CPAT. It benefits him the most as far as them wanting to get him more touches, more involved. His price, especially on PPR sites like DraftKings, is pretty nice. So I feel like as far as benefactors of this, he is definitely number one. Thoughts on that, Evan?
I mean, I definitely can imagine a scenario where that is a possibility, a distinct possibility. I can talk about who Matt Asiata is. He's a big, power back type, kind of a plotter. Last year I think he had a game where he had like 25 carries and 66 yards and 3 touchdowns or something like that against the Eagles, if I recall correctly. He can pass block. He's someone that they probably view as just a functional guy that they can throw in there and run their offense with. But like Tuttle alluded to, McKinnon is if you're trying to find this year's Zach Stacy or this year's Alfred Morris, McKinnon is your guy. But it's very unlikely that any of these guys are going to be daily league options. Another couple, not to get too off topic, but another couple of guys who might be this year's Zach Stacy or Alfred Morris would be Lorenzo Taliaferro. I know that a lot of people were expecting him to get some action on Thursday, and he did not. He didn't play a single snap. But I didn't think that Bernard Pierce looked particularly good. He doesn't have quick feet. Will never play in the passing game. Probably, they're already subbing him out in those situations for Justin Forsett, who is a pretty established Jag. And then Latavius Murray is really interesting, and we'll talk a little bit more about him when we get to that.
So basically, stay tuned for this situation in Minnesota, because we're still not sure. We did have a question in the chat, and from RotoHope it says, does it benefit CPAT though? Now there's no one to take some spotlight off of him, especially with BB's history of eliminating the number one guy. So but I mean, don't you feel like they're going to just try? I mean, they can still run him out of the backfield. They're going to try to get him as many touches as possible, I guess. But yeah, I don't think he's a sure thing, but he's pretty much the only thing that they have. So, I don't know. He was already pretty good value on some of the sites, so I think that he is. I would consider him a safe play this week. Let's go on to the Oakland running back situation, though, since we just talked about it. You've got Latavius Murray is going to be splitting carries with Run DMC this week. Do you see any value there this week alone out of those two guys?
If you're playing in a tournament and you want to win a tournament, the Texans did not look good against the run last week. Alfred Morris was at like 6.5 yards a carry. Roy Halou had 46 yards on 4 carries. I don't know why Jay Gruden abandoned the run and let RG3 drop back to pass 40 times, but they were crushing the Texans on the ground. The Texans' nose tackle is Jarrell Poe, who's a journeyman guy who, I don't know how many Roto World blurbs I've written about teams cutting him, but it's multiple. They have J.J. Watt, but they don't have a whole lot else. Jadeveon Clowney is out, and that's going to be a defense that's susceptible to the run. Now, the way that Raiders play caller Greg Olson has discussed the situation, they're going to use McFadden and Latavius Murray to open the game on a series-by-series rotation, and then in all likelihood they'll ride whoever's doing better early in the game. So these guys are total dice rolls, crapshoots. We don't know what's going to happen in the game. We're not going to pretend that we know what's going to happen in the game. But McFadden and Latavius Murray are both cheap, and because of how weak the Texans are versus the run right now, one of them could definitely blow up. Definitely.
Yeah. Latavius Murray is a guy that I know that Davis Maddock is also big on. He wrote about him this summer. This week, I think strictly a GPP play. Tuttle, any news out there that you think has come out in this week that affects DFS this week that we haven't touched on? You got Gio Bernard and the Jeremy Hill situation. I mean, that is something to kind of keep an eye on. Gio is he's like the love child of daily fantasy touts this week. So I'm curious as to both of your thoughts on Gio this week.
Well, he sets up well. The matchup, you can't really ask for much of a better matchup. I think you want to be careful of overreacting to his week one workload because that's not what you're going to see going forward. I think you'll see a lot more Jeremy Hill this week, and I think Hill will probably be the guy that's going to get a lot of that grunt work. So I think Gio, you're going to need the points from in the passing game, as well as he's going to have to rack up some yards for you because he's not very likely, in my opinion, to kind of get that goal line touchdown work. So you're going to need him to kind of make up for that absence just by racking up yards. So I'm kind of more of the opinion that Gio is more of a GPP play this week because I do think there's more risk involved him in than people want to make out. But I think he's a borderline guy.
Evan, your thoughts on his workload this week?
Here's a stat for you on Giovanni Bernard. 1 touchdown in his last 8 games. And over his last 5 games, he's averaging about, I don't know, it's in my column, but it's like 2.6 yards a carry. See, I would have viewed him differently, Tuttle, and you're the stud daily player, but I would have viewed him as a safe play because I think he might catch 6 to 8 passes, and he's a really good bet for 100 total yards. But he doesn't give you the upside because we think that Jeremy Hill is going to be a lot more involved this week. So, see, how I would have viewed it is Jeremy Hill might be your GPP play because he might go off for 2 TDs. And Giovanni Bernard, it seems a little less likely that he would. I'm not saying that it's impossible. It's definitely possible, actually. But I would have viewed Jeremy Hill as the GPP, the tournament play, and then Giovanni Bernard as the safe play. That's obviously not to say that you're wrong. I mean, I don't know, but
you can say
that's just how I would have viewed it. Well, I mean, we'll know results based, right? We will know
yeah, we can see
after it happens. But but one thing. Let me say one more thing. Rich Rebar on the Fake Goods podcast that I did the other night pointed out that the Falcons linebackers are terrible in coverage. Terrible. It's Joplo Bartu and Paul Warlow. They can't cover anybody. I mean, terrible pass coverage grades from Pro Football Focus. That's a position where the Falcons are missing Sean Weatherspoon. And that's an area of the field where Giovanni Bernard will work when they get him the ball in the passing game. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say I don't think there's anything wrong with classifying both as kind of risky GPP plays, which is how I view it. I think both have their value in different formats. I'm just not trusting Gio to provide me the workload that he got in week 1 is basically all I was saying. I think Gio was probably more I think his opportunity is still more predictable, obviously, than Jeremy Hill. but I still think it's a kind of a risky proposition for a cash game play.
All right, so when you talk about Bernard versus Arian Foster versus Shane Vereen this week, let's just say a PPR site, who is the safest play out of those three, Evan?
Foster. I mean, they're going to feed him. It looks like Bill O'Brien does not care about keeping this dude healthy over the course of the season. What do you have, 27 touches or maybe 27 carries? I can't remember off the top of my head in the first game. And then Bill O'Brien said publicly that that doesn't matter. They're going to keep feeding him. They are not afraid to ride him until the wheels fall right off. And that makes me interested in Jonathan Grimes looking forward, because I don't know if Arian Foster's health will sustain on mammoth workloads. But he seems like a very safe play against Oakland. The Raiders will again be without middle linebacker Nick Roach, who is he's a difference-making run defender. He suffered a concussion in the third preseason game, will not play in week 2, did not play in week 1. And the Jets had a lot of success on the ground, especially with Chris Ivory. Chris Johnson had a pretty solid game. So Arian Foster is safe, and I think he offers some upside. And nobody really talks about him anymore, but he's going to get the rock a lot.
Yeah, and it's also the difference between daily and seasonal. Whereas seasonal, if you have some Foster shares, you're kind of looking to maybe dish him right now if you don't think he's going to stay healthy. Whereas in daily, if someone's going to get all the work, you're not really looking forward to week 11, week 12, those critical weeks right before the playoffs in your league. So kind of ride them while they're hot, and that is I'm right there with you about Foster, and I'm pretty high on Vereen. So it was a question of Vereen versus Foster. Dan, your take on that?
I mean, Foster's easily the safest play. I mean, far and away, he's the safest play this week of those three. I think Vereen probably, I don't want to say he's got the highest upside, because I could easily see a scenario where Foster goes in, gets another 25 carries, and actually finds pay dirt this time once or twice. So I think not only does Foster have the highest floor, but I think he's potentially even got the highest ceiling out of all three players, and that's why I think he's far and away the top option of those three.
All right, let's talk about a guy that might be a value play in the running back spot if you're loading up on quarterback, receivers, and tight ends, and that is Terrence West this week. Evan, thoughts on West in this matchup?
Yeah, one thing that was very, very promising about the way that Brown's offensive coordinator called plays last week was that the Steelers jumped out to a 24-3 lead at halftime. And the Browns didn't panic. They didn't, let Brian Hoyer throw the ball 50 times. A lot of coordinators would have done that. But the Browns did not. They shifted right into an up-tempo, run-heavy approach where they were just ripping off run plays. They stayed with the run. They know who Brian Hoyer is, and he's not he's not a shootout quarterback, basically. And so the way that they used Terrence West and to a lesser extent Isaiah Crowell was very promising. I think that Terrence West, it would surprise me if he got fewer than 18 carries, and it would not surprise me if he got more than like 23, 23 to 27 range. He played a lot more snaps than Isaiah Crowell off the bench, played like 30-something, I think. Isaiah Crowell only played 14, and I know that people will see those 2 touchdowns that were scored last week by Isaiah Crowell, but I think that Terrence West is the safer play. Now, there is some reason to think that Isaiah Crowell will be the red zone back because of the way that he was used last week, and because of the fact that the Browns have talked about him. They see him as more of a true power back, somebody that they want to give the ball to, potentially in the red zone. So for me, Terrence West, safer option. Isaiah Crowell, you can make a case that he offers you more upside. The Saints in week 1, the Falcons didn't run all over them, but they had some success running against them. Last year, the Saints were not very good against the run. So this is a pretty good matchup, especially if the Browns stay committed to the run game like they did last week. This is a pretty tasty scenario for Ben Tate and to a little bit lesser extent Isaiah Kroll.
Yeah, by Ben Tate you mean Terrence West.
Terrence West,
Right.
I'm sorry.
Just want to make sure people weren't playing
Yes.
this week because
Yep.
that did happen with Drew Dinkmeyer. He played a kicker that was cut last week. Didn't work out. Tuttle, your take on is he a safe cash game play? You think?
Yeah, I think he is. One thing I want to reiterate from Evan that we touched on in Wednesday's show too is the fact that the Browns were running play that they run the ball. That's what they do. They were doing that when they were behind in the game, and that's what you want to see. What you can predict is you can predict opportunity, and I think same thing with Evan. I see Terrence West getting a lot of opportunity this week. So for his price tag, he's $5,300 on FanDuel, $4,800 on DraftKings. You're not going to find a safer option at that price point. So I think for sure he's a safe cash game play. I think he'll probably be in the majority of my cash lineups, if not all of them, because he's, again, basically the safest option at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it was really like making lineups. He fit in really well when I was constructing lineups yesterday, just because he does he's a safe guy that kind of lets you spend at other positions that, like you were talking about the ceiling, like in cash game or the floor. In cash games, you want guys that not only have upside but also have a high floor, so that you don't get burned like Travis Kelce and Ladarius Green last week. So that brings us to tight ends. We focused on tight ends a lot last week, and you see why. I mean, it was an important position to focus on. So Evan, I want your take on the what I like to call the normal cast of characters with the tight end position, and that is the big three with Gronk, Graham, and now Julius Thomas.
Yeah, so Jimmy Graham, I love him as a play this week. What I've noticed, writing the matchups column for the last half decade almost, is that when guys get slowed down by double teams, and the Falcons double teamed the heck out of Jimmy Graham last week, and then other guys capitalized, like Marcus Colston had a big game, Brandon Cooks, the running game was awesome. These things tend to come full circle, and they'll come back around, and in a relatively slow week for Jimmy Graham, the Browns are going to look at that tape, and they're going to, they're going to be worried about a lot of guys. And I don't know if they're going to be able to double team Jimmy Graham. I don't know if they'll want to. They'll probably try something different. And I love Jimmy Graham against the Browns. I know that the Saints offensively are not as good on the road historically, but this could definitely, I think, be a blow-up game for Jimmy Graham. Julius Thomas is about as safe as it gets, I think. And we'll talk about Demaryius Thomas in a little bit. I think that he's money in the bank in week 2. But Julius Thomas, the guy's gonna catch. He's gonna be like I don't want to say a ridiculous number, but like a 60% bet to score a touchdown every single game. Entering the game, and that's tough to beat. And then Rob Gronkowski, the way he looked, he didn't look great to me. The targets were certainly there. He played 44% of the snaps. I would probably lean away from him this week. That might not be the I don't know. If you want to use him in a tournament, do it. I'm a little bit concerned. I want to see him come back and get his explosion and his fluidity back before I start messing around with him in daily. Obviously, I love him in a redraft league, but in daily, I don't know. I'll be interested to get your guys' takes on Gronkowski.
You're scaring me with the Gronk talk because he is in.
He didn't look like a bum. He just kind of looked like a little bit like Frankenstein.
Okay, well, like one of the main spots for him is he is only like 6. Is it 6 or 63? Tuttle on DraftKings?
He's 6 on DraftKings.
He's 6,000 on DraftKings, and that's that's kind of like he's basically in the Julius Thomas spot that he was last week, where you've got the 2 top tight ends, and then you had Julius Thomas that was kind of like as far as pricing goes, a tier underneath him, and I feel like you've kind of got Gronk there this week, so that is why I'm looking at Gronk this week. I do think that Graham, especially on FanDuel, is going to be at least in most or some of my lineups. If I'm hedging cash game lineups, he will definitely be a hedge there. I know that our man Trevor Belangia in today's Fade or Follow, where he talks about last night's ownership, was talking about Jimmy Graham. So I think. Anyway, I'll get Tuttle's take, and then I'll circle around another topic that stems from tight ends.
I think I have a little different perspective on Gronkowski this week than most people do. We were talking to him in our private chat about him, and I think Steve was the one who mentioned, well, isn't he risky? Isn't he a risky play coming off injury? And as someone that is usually more risk averse than most people, I actually don't view him as a risky play this week, just because I think you know what you're going to get from him. Sure, he's not going to play in 80% of the team snaps, but you know that going in. And when he does play, you know he's going to get a large amount of the targets going his way. So he's going to play in the red zone, and he's going to get a ton of red zone targets like he did in week 1. And when he sees the field in general, he's going to see a lot of targets. So for his price on DraftKings especially, I like him. I think the matchup's really good too, is another thing. I think one of the linebackers from Minnesota, I think only one of them graded above a negative grade on Pro Football Focus's grading scale for pass coverage. And I just think he provides a good opportunity, especially in tournaments, but I don't think he's even that risky for cash game plays either.
The Rams tight ends, who aren't good, had 7 catches against the Vikings defense last week. Rob Gronkowski was targeted on 29% of his snaps, which is a ridiculously high rate. And also, I had another good. Oh, on the injury report, he's listed as probable, which is actually an upgrade from last week's questionable. I don't know what that means.
It sounds like you're getting on the.
It's only a good sign.
It sounds like you're getting on the Gronkowski train with us, Evan. That's what it sounds like.
The thing, maybe I'm biased against him a little bit because I'm going real cheap at tight end, and I mostly play tournaments.
Oh,
yeah.
Perfect segue. Segue.
I want to throw out, he is a great tournament player though this week. I played a little Thursday night action. I think he was about 2% owned in some of the tournaments. And that's exactly what you're looking for with a player like Gronk, who has as much upside as he does.
Yeah, so leads us into this discussion of cheap tight ends. And I feel like there are some people that are viewing tight ends as the same as running backs and wide receivers, in the fact that you want to go cheap because there's a word being tossed around, and it's a tricky little word when it comes to daily fantasy. Tuttle, do you know what that word is?
No, I was answering someone's question in chat. Sorry.
It's value.
There it is.
Who is going to meet value and what is going to meet value. And I don't want to pick on anybody, because I feel like I also used to think solely about this. For me, it was strictly salaries divided by fantasy points. That's how I looked at the whole picture. And now it's just you can't do it with you can do it. I just choose not to. Like I was saying, it's not a bad way to look at things, it's just not the best way to look at things, because there is the positional scarcity that we talk about with everything. We talk about it in NBA. We talk about it with MLB and pitching, and it's also the same with the quarterback position and the tight end position when you talk about NFL. So that is an interesting. I feel like if you can get a safe play for cheap, yes, but don't view tight end the same as running backs and wide receivers, because you want to get your points out of them. And if you have a cheap play that you feel like can get you there, if you feel like Jermaine Gresham can get you there this week, if you feel like Kelsey can get you there this week, then go for it. But other than that, like, just get your points, especially in cash games. Get your points using the normal cast of characters. And that's my little just take on it. Evan, you winced when I said Jermaine Gresham, so I'm curious as to like your cheap tight ends that you want to use this week.
Oh man, I had a brain fart in one league this week, and I picked up Jermaine Gresham, and I just dropped him the next day. I spent $1 in FAAB money, and I just dropped him. But
I did too, but I didn't drop him.
Oh gosh.
No, the tight ends that I'm looking at this week, and I'm limited mostly to FanDuel tournaments, especially in NFL. So that's just where my perspective mostly comes from. I love the price on Zach Ertz. We saw what Julius Thomas did to the Colts D last week. There are not good players on the Colts defense, to be perfectly honest with you. They got Vontae Davis. Jarrell Freeman is okay, and he didn't practice today. So this is a really, really good matchup. And the highest projected scoring game of the week, and then the second highest projected scoring game of the week per over-unders is Chiefs-Broncos. And we told you on this show, well, Davis didn't, but the rest of us told you to not use Travis Kelce. Well, we're coming back. We're coming back, and I love Travis Kelce this week. I think that Andy Reid is going to get things fixed to some extent. I think the Chiefs will again have struggles running the football. I think that especially after they lost their right tackle Jeff Allen to injured reserve today, I think that Aqib Talib will be on Dwayne Bowe. And Andy Reid already spoke openly early this week, probably right after he watched last week's tape, that they want to increase Travis Kelce's role, and they need to increase Travis Kelce's role. If I'm trying to win a tournament, I love him. He's still super cheap. I want to say he's $4,900 on FanDuel.
Yeah, and he went down $200 on DraftKings, where he's officially minimum salary. Yeah.
Awesome. So if you're trying to hit a home run, those are the two guys that I'm looking at. I think that they're both great. I don't want to use values, but I'm going to use it. I think they're both great values.
Yeah. Tuttle, any cheap tight ends you're looking at this week?
Yeah, DraftKings. Steve's yelling in chat at Cannon for bringing him up, but he is, I think, a really good DraftKings play at tight end, and that's Jason Witten. Is only 3,800. I think you had, if I remember correctly, you had some good things to say or some promising things to say about Witten in your article this week, Evan.
Well, he got shut down the 49ers shut down tight ends with Patrick Willis. We've known that now for like two plus years. This week, it's a good spot for him to bounce back. Tony Romo is not really the deep ball thrower that he used to be, and they need Jason Witten. I think that he's the number 2 pass option in the offense. I don't think that anything changed because of one slow game against in one of the most difficult matchups that he possibly could have faced. I think he's safe. I think he's a real safe option.
Yeah, that's what I agree with too. I mean that's my perspective on it. And he's only 3,800 on DraftKings, which that's dirt cheap over there. You're looking at 7,000 is kind of the Jimmy Graham range. So it's a huge drop off for Witten, and he's a good salary saver there. I've got a question on Greg Olsen. What are you guys' thoughts on Olsen this week?
He was brought up yesterday on the show as far as just getting lots of red zone targets. So I just think it's an unnecessary play. It's strictly a GPP play. He wouldn't be in my top 5 as far as cash games plays.
It's definitely a good matchup. We saw what Larry Donald did to the Lions D last week. The thing is that I don't think that Greg Olsen has suddenly changed the player that he is in the matter of 1 week. I mean, a lot of people see that he was very, very productive. He played an awesome game. He really did in week 1. He deserves credit for that. But, over the course of a long career, a sustained stretch, he's a pretty average fantasy producer. And, I like him. He's fine. Solid matchup. Probably, we'll probably trade off with Kelvin Benjamin as the number 1 option in their passing offense, but I'm looking elsewhere in week 2.
Yeah. Well, that will cover the tight end position. Let's get to quarterback. Who do you like outside of Peyton Manning? We all like Peyton Manning this week, right, Evan?
Tuttle, take this one. I gotta bring up the game so I don't blank out here.
Yeah, no problem. There's a lot of. I think your most common play this week, or who you're going to see the most, is probably going to be Andrew Luck in that Eagles-Colts game. I think you'll see a lot of him. And kind of going back to the Follower Fade column article posted today by Trevor, it looked like Luck, Manning, Rodgers, and Locker were kind of the top guys being taken. Rodgers, I think, is obviously in a good spot against the Jets, and his price is really, really nice on DraftKings. It's nice on FanDuel as well at 9,100. And then Jake Locker is kind of the guy that I guess people are going to for salary relief. I don't have a problem with him. I don't think he's going to be a cash game option for me, but I certainly see the reasoning, and I think there's strong arguments to be made that he is a good play this week.
Yeah, I think Dallas D. Someone compared them, like you guys play NBA. Someone compared them to Philly.
Yeah.
Like you could just pretty much. It's never a bad idea to start anybody against them, and Jake Locker is definitely in the mix. You named other guys that Nick Foles and Andrew Luck, I think, are obvious guys. I'm rolling Nick Foles, trying to double down on Foles and Ertz in a couple of spots. Andrew Luck should be a machine. He's a little bit more expensive than Ertz on FanDuel, actually like 1,000 more. So I was able to more easily fit Foles into my lineups, and plus I love Ertz. If you wanna get a little bit cute, I think Geno Smith is kind of interesting against the Packers. I don't think there's any reason to fear the Packers' defense. I think there is a conceivable scenario where Aaron Rodgers lights up the Jets' secondary. And last week, Geno Smith had 10 rushing attempts. And they will call plays for him in the red zone. I'm not saying that that's like some great play, but if you don't want to go after the Lockers and the Foles and the Lucks, and you want to go real cheap, just give it some consideration. Geno Smith, maybe doubling down with him, with Decker. I think that both of them have a pretty good matchup, and they're very affordable.
Yeah, I was extremely, extremely surprised. I played some Thursday contests just to kind of get a grasp at some own percentage, and I was extremely surprised at Foles' own percentage. He was very under-owned. Like I said, Luck was far and away the top option, but then you were looking at Foles in most contests was under 10% owned. So I was extremely surprised by that, especially because like Evan pointed out, his price on FanDuel seems to just fit well with roster construction. He's right at that $8,300 price point, and you can kind of do what you want with the rest of your roster if you take Foles as your quarterback. So I think he is my top option.
Tuttle, they ran 82 plays last week. 82,
yep.
Man. It's like he can screw up for half the game, which he did,
exactly.
And he still balls out. It's that almost gives him like a floor. And then if he actually plays well for 4 quarters, he could go absolutely nuts.
That's exactly what I said yesterday. I had someone say, well, aren't you scared of Foles? Thinking he's kind of a risky option based on his results in Jacksonville. I said, I think that game's actually reasoning as to why you play him, because he pretty much played the worst he's going to all year and still finished with 15 to 16 FanDuel points. So you're looking at that more or less as your floor for an $8,000 player. I think he's the best play on FanDuel in my opinion, but I think there are other options.
Yeah, and I think if last week we advised against going with Sean Hill. I can't tell you how many head-to-head games that I played that people played Sean Hill against me.
Wow.
Oh, it was amazing.
And
Wow.
it was like it's because of the whole salary divided by fantasy points. Like people saw him as the best value play there at quarterback, and it's just kind of a hard lesson to learn. But I had Jamal Charles in my lineups and still was able to win all of those contests. I didn't lose one contest that I played against Hill, and my two quarterbacks I hedged on FanDuel, but my two quarterbacks were Foles and Cutler. So they didn't do like amazing, but they still did serviceable, and they still got their points. Basically, they weren't going to absolutely screw you, which was was an option with Sean Hill. However, I think that if Jake Locker is your value play quarterback this week, I think it's okay. Like against Dallas, it's not like a Sean Hill situation. You've got Locker, who appears like he's comfortable with the offense. You had late round QB yesterday say that Hunt's like the QB whisperer, which people have said that, and he can run with his legs. He's got some nice targets in Hunter and Wright and even Walker, I guess, if he can catch the ball in Washington. So he's got those options, but he's playing against Dallas, and that's like the deciding factor if you want to use him. I don't know how much I'll be using him in cash games, to be honest. But I think if people do want to use him, it's not that bad of an option. We just talked about Chicago and Jay Cutler last week, which brings me to this week with the whole wide receiver situation there. Let's start there with wide receiver. What do you think about? It sounds like Jeffrey's not going to play, and Brandon Marshall is kind of like a game time decision. If you had to guess, Evan, what would you guess?
I'm going to guess that Marshall plays and that Jeffrey doesn't, which actually goes against what we saw today. We saw that Jeffrey was limited in practice and Brandon Marshall didn't do anything except for lightly jog. But Brandon Marshall's such a warrior that, it wouldn't surprise, and he's played on no practice before. It just wouldn't surprise me if they purposely, it was all by design that they held him out. But I'm not really messing with either of those guys, which kind of stinks because the matchup looks good. The 49ers, it looks like they're not going to have Tremaine Brock, who's their best cornerback. So that kind of stinks. I don't know. I know that on FanDuel you cannot do late swaps. I don't know if you can do that on other sites. Again, if you're trying to win a tournament and you like to take risks, Antonio Holmes, I'm guessing, I have not looked at prices, but I'm guessing that he's minimum. He had 5 targets last week. Josh Morgan will not play. Trustman basically confirmed that. And then there's a chance that Santonio Holmes starts.
Yeah.
So
there's a good chance that he starts.
Yeah, very, very fair chance that he starts.
So does that make you more on, we talked about Martellus Bennett, but what about Forte as far as getting more looks, more touches, more catches? Thoughts on Forte this week, Evan?
Well, DeMarco Murray kind of shredded the 49ers run D last week, and Matt Forte and DeMarco Murray are kind of similar players. So that would give me a lot of confidence in Matt Forte being a fairly safe option. And then, the fact that the receivers are so banged up. Martellus Bennett is going, he's going to see a lot of Patrick Willis probably. So I don't know if he's a strong option, even with the receiver injuries. Still, though, Matt Forte going on the road against San Francisco, that concerns me a little bit, even after what we saw last week. I don't think that he's going to get shut down or shut out. It's just, I don't know if he offers you the big ceiling, but you can look at it, several different ways. I would not be trying to win a tournament with Matt Forte, though.
Interesting. Your take on Forte, Dan?
I don't mind him as a play. It's kind of interesting. I think a lot of times what happens in fantasy football is we say, well, this guy's going to be out, so this guy's going to get more opportunity, which is obviously true, but it's hard to project or predict then how good that opportunity is going to be, because San Francisco's now going to be able to focus on the run if both Marshall and Jeffrey are out. They're going to they're going to switch up their defensive game plan is what's going to happen. So I think he's a good matchup, obviously, just going based on the Cowboys stats, and I think he is a good option and pretty safe floor. But I think in general we have to be careful about saying, oh, just because this guy's out now, he's a really good play. Because it doesn't always work that way. It doesn't translate that way all the time. I think the biggest point that Evan brought up, or not the biggest point, but an interesting point that Evan brought up as far as the passing game goes, and with late swap sites, I think it could be fun as far as tournament strategy goes. Locking in Santonio Holmes in one of your spots on on a site like DraftKings, kind of playing with your flex there, because you're going to have plenty of people in your lineup in that Philadelphia-Indianapolis game anyways. So you're going to have a lot of swap opportunities. So if you want to gamble or input Holmes, Marshall, Jeffrey in kind of that flex position on DraftKings, you'll have a lot of opportunity to switch off those plays just because then the Monday night game has so many options. So you might be able to see a week this week where you're going to see guys like Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey completely under-owned because of injury question marks, where you can kind of exploit that with some of your strategy.
Yeah. You have Dink saying that you need to use the proper term of swap opportunities.
Swap opportunities.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
You have a lot of swap opportunity on DraftKings this week.
You've got Philly and Indiana, or Indianapolis rather, and you've got Chicago and San Francisco as the two primetime games. So we've also talked about the 2-for-2, where you definitely want to make sure that he's in your flex spot. But if you're playing two guys from those primetime games, and if something happens where it doesn't look like Holmes is going to see the field that much, or if you took the kind of chance on a Marshall, then you can sub them out and also maybe sub out another player and swap them with two players in that primetime situation. So that's the old 2-for-2 swap.
For example, like Brandon Marshall's 8,000 on DraftKings and LaShawn McCoy's 8,200.
Right.
Alshon Jeffrey's 6,000. Alshon's like 62 and Macklin's 61. So the swap opportunities line up almost equally.
Fair enough. We had a question from Maki Supa, a.k.a. Andrew Wiggins. You can reach him on Twitter at Andrew Wiggins. He's not that Andrew Wiggins.
Not the basketball guy.
Yeah, he's the richer Andrew Wiggins, basically. But no, he asked about Rashad Jennings, Evan.
Okay, so it was really promising that he got a goal line carry last week.
Yeah.
The offensive line right now isn't very good. He averaged 2.9 yards a carry. Andre Williams. I mean, I don't know if we're talking about daily. He would not be on my radar at all against the Cardinals. That's still a good run D. Larry Foote actually is playing good football even at age 74. That probably won't last more than a few weeks because he's so old. But he's probably got a couple good games left, and they still got Dan Williams there, who's a stud nose tackle, and Calais Campbell, who dominates. And Matt Shaughnessy actually is one of the best edge-setting, run-defending outside linebackers in football. I would not be looking at Rashad Jennings as a daily league play. In redraft league, he looks real safe, and then the fact that he gets goal line carries now, that gives him a little bit more upside than what was anticipated. I still think that Andre Williams is the most talented runner in the Giants' backfield, and his role will gradually grow, but not right now. Rashad Jennings looks like he's pretty much locked up into 20 touches.
Well, I have a question for you, Evan. Then a guy that I like more personally, that's at a similar price point on both sides, would be Alfred Morris. Do you like Morris or Jennings better?
Definitely Alfred Morris. And your hope with him would be that Jay Gruden learns from his mistakes last week
Yeah.
and just feeds Alfred Morris the rock. Because, if he would have gotten 25 carries, I think there's a really good chance that the Redskins win in week 1. He was destroying the Texans. He's always going to be dicey because if they fall behind, and it doesn't look like the Redskins are a very good team, so that may happen somewhat frequently, he's not going to be on the field. It's going to be Roy Halou. But, Alfred Morris against the Jags at home. Jay Gruden needs to ride Alfred Morris. For the love of God, ride this man. He's risky, though. He's definitely risky. But, yeah, I would play him over Rashad Jennings pretty much every time.
And that's my thought on it, too.
Okay.
Yeah, unless Jay Gruden pulls this crap again where he, starts to throw the ball all around the yard for no apparent reason.
Morris, Gore, or Vereen? All in that same price range.
Vereen is still volatile, from a daily league perspective, because we could see more Ridley this week. We could definitely see more Ridley.
No. Belichick is predictable. It's very predictable.
Oh, right. And then who?
You're scaring me though, because I've got lots of Vereen in cash game lineups right
Morris, Gore. I dropped Gore out of the discussion personally, and then from there I go with what's Evan's saying, and the fact that I think Vereen's more volatile. Where I'd feel more comfortable going Morris, even though we kind of Jay Gruden was stupid last week. Even with that, I think Morris is more predictable.
I would say so. Morris is like cheaper than Vereen on DraftKings. Then again, he doesn't get the PPR. He doesn't catch passes, so his value is a little more diminished in PPR. Then you've got Vereen, who is cheaper on FanDuel. So it's an interesting conundrum. I think I'm gonna risk it and go Vereen. I know he's volatile, but Alf Morris. When you have who was it that stole his touchdown in last week?
Daryl Young.
Young, yeah, and he did that last. I mean, wasn't there a game where he had 3 touchdowns?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I had everyone had Alf rostered that week because everyone was just in a tizzy. So, yeah, I think I'll go with Vereen. I think I'll take my chances there. But if he doesn't pan out, I'll have Evan in the back of my head saying he's still volatile. So that will definitely be a thing.
I mean, I love Shane Vereen. It's just these guys are real close. All for me. I mean, I love Shane Vereen. I'm not saying he's a bad play. He's a great play.
Napster Man says less moisture in the domes for Ridley fumbles. That's a typical Napster Man take.
Well, I want to use this to transition because I know Evan's on this guy too. You might not know Napster Man, Evan. He's all into like the psychology, like bobblehead game type things, which is something that I don't normally do. But one of the things I am a believer in is Peyton Manning getting a receiver all the opportunities they need coming off of a bad game. So I don't like to play the psychology card unless we're talking about Peyton Manning feeding a wide receiver.
And I'm not on this train. You know I'm not on this train, Tuttle, and you're wanting Silva to back you up.
If you wanted to, you could statistically go back. You could watch tape and go back statistically and show that Peyton feeds guys that are coming off a bad game.
It's real.
It is. It's a real thing.
In Indianapolis, he actually talked about it. He keeps track of it.
But it's not like he did not give Demaryius a lot of targets last week.
Yeah, but he knows the production.
Right.
Demaryius is going to go nuts this week. Mm-hmm. He's going to ball the heck out.
Don't make me roster.
And Napster Man, I do know who he is because every time I'm playing a tournament, he's always up at the top of the leaderboard when I check it.
Yeah. Is this the $2 tournament you're in?
Yeah, those two and the expensive ones.
No, Napster Man is there's an inside joke with him and a $2 tournament because Sirius
I remember
XM
that.
falsely got on him for it. So it's like an inside joke where Nap only enters $2 tournaments, which is not true at all. Napster Man was he loves the girly drinks though in the Bahamas. Oh man,
I could see that.
he had girly drinks at every turn that I was looking at. He also saved my bacon getting out of the Bahamas. I would still be in the Bahamas if it weren't for him and his roommate and me beating on their door at 6 a.m. in the morning saying, I need cash.
It sounds horrible that you would be stuck in the Bahamas. I can't believe that'd be a horrible situation.
It would.
But you're wrong on this, Dave, by the way.
Okay.
Evan's backing me on this. And I'm a guy that does not play doctor.
Listen, I'm rostering Demarius anyways because he did have lots of targets and his price came down significantly. So when he's only 7K on DraftKings, you gotta play Demarius. I just don't think that. I don't know. I think it's a little bit overblown.
I don't know. Dr. Renee Miller's in our chat saying it's a real thing.
Okay.
Okay. We have Evan Silva, Dr. Renee Miller, and Mr. Tuttle 05 versus David Kitchen. Who's going to win this one?
Someone actually did do a study on it, and I never looked at it statistically to prove it, but just writing my columns and trying to project how everybody's going to do over the last several years, I noticed it, and it's a real thing. Someone did do a statistical study on it. If Renee Miller says it's true, I assure you it is true.
Oh, wow. Well, okay, so I'm in the minority on this. I'm playing Demarius this week. I just think that it was overblown last year when Demarius, when Peyton had those three receivers, and people were picking the receiver the week before that didn't have a good game, and they were picking them to have the good game the next week.
Well, but that worked out several times.
Yeah, it worked,
didn't it?
Yeah, but sometimes it didn't. Like you had Decker that repeatedly had good games, like 2 or 3 games in a row. So
yeah, but then he came back and had 4 touchdowns, in that one game after everybody was like, oh, he's done.
Right.
He's done, and then he had the 4 touchdown game.
So that's what I'm saying is that it just seemed like too easy of a cop out last year to pick the one Broncos receiver that didn't have a good game the week before and recommend them for the next week because Peyton was wanting to get them their touches. That's all I'm saying. But yes, you guys are all on the same page and I'm not. So if people are listening, they know which side to listen to. So yeah, that brings us to really do we want to talk about defenses this week? Do you have any hot takes, Evan, for us?
I'm rolling Bucks against Austin Davis or Sean Hill. I'll take either of them. Even though the Bucks lost both their defensive ends, that kind of blows. But the Bucks are real cheap. I like cheap D's, and I love teeing off on bad offenses. Feel real good about the Bucks.
Hey, Evan.
And also, if you want to pay a little bit, Denver against Kansas City. The Chiefs' offensive line is a mess. It got worse this week, losing Jeff Allen. The Denver D-line is nasty. So if you want to pay a little bit, Denver and Bucks are cheap, where I've seen them.
Do you typically pay up for the D?
No, but sometimes I think about it. If I got a few extra dollars.
Of course.
Dave, I don't know, man. I don't know.
I like the cheap D personally.
Yeah.
If I'm gonna get it in, I'll just get the cheap D.
I'm definitely taking a soundbite of Evan Silva saying I like the cheap D's. So that's definitely going to be. And Kyle Cannon in the chat knew where my mind went immediately. He knew it immediately. He said Dave's holding back, but no.
See, I didn't even pick up on it until late, man. I'm sitting here trying to have a serious conversation.
Well, you said the Bucks, so it can't be that serious, right?
How about you? How about you guys? Do you guys have any different Ds?
I mean, I used 3 defenses last week, and one worked out with the Texans. I used a lot of Bucks because they were cheap and because Cam Newton wasn't playing, and it kind of burned me. So I'm scared to go back to that again. But I do think that Texans. The thing about the Texans this week is that they're so expensive. But Redskins might be a cheap play that you want to go with. I don't have a problem with the Bucks defense, and there was another one, but it slipped my mind. Tuttle.
Yeah, I think it's on FanDuel. You're probably just going to go the Bucks or Redskins. If you have to do a minimum price D on FanDuel, then it's the Redskins. Real quick, my kicker hot take is Patrick Murray for Tampa Bay.
Because
nobody's going to own him, and predicting kickers is a crapshoot anyways, other than the fact that you want to take an offense that's going to score. I think Tampa Bay will be in the position to score this week, and Patrick Murray for the win.
Okay, so Vincent Jackson this week. Yay or nay, Evan?
Love.
Especially
Love Mike
DraftKings.
Evans, too, by the way. Love Mike Evans.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he looked awesome last week. He had the same number of targets as Vincent Jackson. He had a touchdown called back. The Bucks are starting Janoris Jenkins. The Rams are starting Janoris Jenkins, and then they're starting a 6th-round rookie from Missouri by the name of E.J. Gaines, who really crazy college football fans will remind you that E.J. Gaines had a good game in college against Mike Evans, but that's not a good way to predict this stuff. E.J. Gaines is 5'10", 190 pounds, and I would expect Janoris Jenkins to be up against Vincent Jackson a ton. And then so we'll see Mike Evans against E.J. Gaines a lot. And I thought Mike Evans looked awesome in the first game, and I really like him, and he's also very inexpensive.
Yeah, you've got Vincent Jackson 7,300 on FanDuel, which is probably a little bit pricier, but like Tuttle said, no brainer on DraftKings at $5K. I wonder how heavily owned he's going to be. That's my question, is if people are going to overlook him on DraftKings, because he's like nearly a lock to be in every one of my single lineups, even if I hedge. At $5K, are you kidding me? Get out of here. Tuttle, are you with me there?
Preach it, Dave.
FanDuel, though? FanDuel, 7,300?
I can see the case for it. I'm not going to do it. I'd rather have... Well, he's not exact same price range, but I'd rather have Jordy for a little more.
Okay, well, let's do a quick pick 5. We're going to give you 2 players. Evan, you have to pick one. And trying to pull up draft day. Maybe it's my internet, but draft day is running really slow.
Oh, by the way, love Monty Ball this week, especially after the Chiefs lost Derek Johnson and Mike DeVito, arguably their 2 best run defenders, to season-ending Achilles tears. We recommended Monty Ball a little bit last week. He got the workload, didn't have a huge game, but was rock solid, and he's still in a good price range from what I've seen, and the matchup is going to be great at Denver. This is a game that Vegas is projecting will be a blowout win for Denver, and it makes a lot of sense that it will be. And Monty Ball should again have another huge workload.
Yeah, we talked about he's just the guy that is just going to stay consistent as far as price goes. Okay, so I can't pull up the pick 5, so we won't do it. Sorry.
Unbelievable.
I said Wiggins would never let the site load this slow, and then Taylor C., which I don't know, it might be Taylor Cavey, who was one of the co-founders of Draft Day with Wiggins, said not true. We might have it. Let's see if we have it on our site. We do. All right, Nick Foles or Colin Kaepernick?
Oh, Foles, easily.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's easy. Lynch or Arian Foster?
Arian.
Alfred Morris or Rashad Jennings? We kind of had this question earlier.
Alfred.
So we're 3 for 3. Percy Harvin or Cordero Patterson?
That's a tough one.
I'm going to go with CPAT on that.
I'll go with CPAT too.
Tuttle, don't be on the fence. You got to pick one.
Percy.
Okay. Had to be different. T.Y. Hilton or Deshaun Jackson?
Oh, T.Y. He could get busy. This could be a T.Y. game.
Yeah, before we leave real quick, Evan, T.Y. or Reggie Wayne? Like, you like T.Y. What about Wayne this week? Does he get any love from you?
Not in daily. I mean, I think he'll be solid, but he'll end up going against Brandon Boykin, who's the Eagles' best corner. We saw what Alan Hearns did last week on the outside to Kerry Williams. Just got smoked.
Kerry Williams is terrible.
Exactly.
Bad.
And either Ty or Nix is going to have a really big game. Hakeem Nicks is not quite as involved in the offense, so he's really, really high risk. And T.Y. Hilton is generally high risk too. But I think in this game, just a great matchup, huge over-under. I mean, this could be a blow-up game for T.Y.
And Dwayne Allen, yay or nay for a GPP play?
No.
Nay.
Nope.
Okay. Yeah. So there you have it. Thanks to Evan Silva from Roto World for joining us today on the Insiders TV show, sponsored by Fantasy Elite. I got my draft handed to me against Stevie PTL and Kevin Magic Sports Guy. Do you know why, Tuttle? This is going to shock you, but do you know why?
Because you picked a bad quarterback?
No, because I haven't drafted.
Yeah.
I was talking, and we were in some deep conversation, and I auto-picked my first three. So I've got to go. That is a site that you can go late swap, so I got to go rearrange stuff. But I will be drafting throughout the weekend. So if you're on there, hit me up, send me a challenge, and I will play you. I'll be at the in-laws tomorrow, so be looking for something to do for sure. But that will do it. Thanks for everybody for joining us tonight. We'll have the college football show with Ben Pritchett, Natural Slugger, and Jordan Case. Ben, if you're not familiar, he is like the Evan Silva of college football. He loves to write in-depth stuff. He wrote over 10,000 words for this week's Daily Fantasy College Football article. So he'll be on the show tonight at 10 Central Time, 11 Eastern. And then on Sunday morning, we'll also have a show. So that will do it. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you later. There's my music. I knew it. I knew it was there. I knew it.